All right, back on the, wait a minute, we didn't even get started. Welcome to the Young Turks. I do that on Rebel Headquarters almost every day. I'm like, back on Rebel Headquarters. Oh, right, that was from yesterday. Anyway, Cenk Uygur, Kasparian, Ken Klippenstein, everybody. Look at this, from TYT Investigates. He's in the house. He's normally in a secure location in an undisclosed bunker in the middle of the country.
Breaking those stories.
Yeah. Breaking kneecaps, breaking stories all day long for TYT Investigates.
Hey, great to be here.
It's good to have you here. And for the record, he's never broken a kneecap in his life. Okay.
So he might have, you don't know.
No.
I hope one of my stories have not.
Ben Mangwood's almost had a kneecap broken.
Why?
Remember the story I told in the post game with the guy, the mover who attacked him?
Yeah.
So, anyways. Big show ahead as usual for you guys, and actually tonight, Rebel Headquarters, of course, Lisa Ring, Just Democrat that's running. We're going to talk to people fighting against climate change. It's a really interesting story. We'll do a fun post game. We'll get into Ken's personal life. That'll be fun. He doesn't know that. He just found out. Okay. And then later for the members, you get to watch TYT interviews live. I want to go in depth with Ken and Jonathan Larson from the TYT Investigates team, so you guys can see what they're up to and talk about some of the stories they've broken recently. Okay. Speaking of breaking news, we have something right off the top for you guys in a sec. But I tell you, I mean, we're going to get to it in a minute too, but the Soros thing has me in an absolute rage. The lies about the caravan are disastrous, but I need you to stay around near the end of the show when we talk about the polling. Donald Trump's polling, it is amazing. Okay, I'm just going to leave it at that, and it's super relevant, obviously, to the elections that are coming up in 2 weeks. So, before we do anything else, though, Esther, I forgot to tell you guys this. I'm going to tell them about gifting right off the top, okay? So you guys asked for the ability to give gifts to others, the membership gift, because you're awesome. And I love that you guys asked for it, right? And bless your hearts for it. And it's a win-win in two different ways. One, it helps build the home of progressives. We're basically a progressive Netflix. We have 18 different progressive shows. You can watch ad-free anytime if you sign up. And so that's tyt.com/join, of course, to sign up. But folks said, hey, look, I got an Uncle Bob that I want to give a membership to because I want him to watch this because he's conservative or he's independent, but he's a good guy, and I want him to be exposed to this, or he's watching too much Fox News. I got a dad, I got a grandma, or hey, I got a friend who'd like it. He's a great progressive, he doesn't know about it, and I want to give a gift to him, or he can't afford it, and I want to give a gift to him. So bless your hearts for doing that. So we now made that available. tyt.com/gift is the way to do that. And so you could buy a monthly renewing membership like a lot of you have, most of you have, or you could just do a one-time membership of 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. We're giving you all those options because I don't know what your budget is, and I don't know how well you know Uncle Bob. Maybe you think just 3 months will do it for him, or we go month to month, see how he reacts, right? So thank you guys for asking for that, and we built it for you. So tyt.com/gift to make that happen. All right, let's get started. What do you got, Adam?
We have a breaking news story regarding Saudi Arabia. Mike Pompeo has given a press conference, and in that press conference, he specified that the State Department is considering possible sanctions against the Saudi officials who were part of Khashoggi's death. Now, Saudi Arabia has changed its story several times in regard to what happened to Khashoggi. First, they said that they were certain that Khashoggi left the consulate in Istanbul. Later, they said that he was accidentally killed during interrogations, an interrogation that had gone wrong in the Saudi consulate in Istanbul. But either way, because of increasing pressure toward the White House and specifically the State Department, Pompeo said during this media briefing that the State and Treasury departments are looking at the possibility of sanctions meant to target those responsible for human rights violations. Now, one other bit of evidence that shows that there's mounting pressure toward the Trump administration is how Trump has been reacting to this story today. Now, first, it seemed as though he was doing anything and everything possible to help the Saudis cover for this murder, but now he has some relatively strong words for the Saudis. In fact, he was quoted as saying, they had a very bad original concept. It was carried out poorly, and the cover-up was the worst in the history of cover-ups. They had the worst cover-up ever.
Which I love, because the issue here isn't the murder of a journalist, it's that they didn't carry it out and cover it up well enough.
Exactly.
It's that they got caught. That's the problem.
Yeah, it's a great point, Ken, and I have to confess that I lost track of that. I don't think that he's ever said how gruesome the dismembering is. Like, oh my God, I can't believe they beheaded this guy. I can't believe they cut off his fingers while he was alive. I can't believe they brought a bone saw. He's never said any of that stuff. All he's ever said is like, well, could be, you know, could maybe they were wrong. I would love it if it's not Mohammed bin Salman. That's what he said yesterday. Now he's saying, oh, it's a terrible, worst cover-up ever. Well, okay, good. I'll take it that he's at least acknowledging it's a terrible cover-up, and that he's not going to be able to aid and abet in that cover-up because it's blown back up in his face. And I got news for politicians in Washington because apparently they don't know this. No one in this country likes Saudi Arabia. And by the way, in this case, I think it's merited. I don't mean just in the case of Khashoggi, I mean in the case of Saudi Arabia. Not because the Saudi Arabian people are bad people, of course not. They're human beings just like everybody else, but their government is atrocious, has been consistently atrocious. The right wing doesn't like Saudi Arabia, the left wing doesn't like Saudi Arabia, it's got no fan base. So as Trump was sitting out there for weeks defending them, he was getting pummeled and his ratings are now disastrous. You know, it's of course not the sole factor, but I don't think it helped him. Even the right wing, yeah, they were trying to smear Khashoggi and calling him a terrorist sympathizer and et cetera, but that didn't go over too well.
It didn't work, and that was the thing that I really noticed today, because that whole whisper campaign to essentially slander Khashoggi as this Islamic extremist and someone who deserved it, it didn't work, it didn't catch on. And I think it's because Trump's administration and right-wing propagandists underestimated how much Americans, including the right wing, are sick and tired of the Saudi royals and their antics, not just here in the United States, but throughout the world. And what I also found interesting was the New York Times take on this, because while we emphasize the financial ties that Trump has with Saudi Arabia, and I always think that Trump thinks about himself and himself only when it comes to his decision making, the New York Times seems to latch on to how Saudi Arabia is the centerpiece of Donald Trump's foreign policy, right? Especially when it comes to combating Iran. So I think that there's truth to that, but I don't think that that's really the motivating factor here for Trump. I really think it's the financial ties.
As you said, they give me $40, $50 million for my apartments. Why wouldn't I like them? Well, maybe because they behead people on a regular basis. And again, I have never heard a real American outside of Washington ever say, man, I love that government of Saudi Arabia.
Right.
Like never, ever, ever, and you're not gonna hear it. So, and as they dismembered someone, defending them just, man, was not playing well in Peoria, as they say in politics, right? So now he's saying, oh, the worst cover-up ever. Can't believe it. But again, look, give them credit. If they're heading in the right direction, we'll take it. Revoking the visas, great. And two more quick things about it. If you remember, of course, Fahrenheit 9/11, Michael Moore's movie, I think that resonated with people, and not just liberals. The fact that we whisked the Saudi royals and the bin Laden family, et cetera, out of the country to protect them after they had attacked us on 9/11. And again, I don't know that those particular folks that were in Texas and other places in the country had personally attacked us, but 15 out of the 19 hijackers were Saudis, and at a bare minimum, we could have done some vetting, or extreme vetting, as Trump would say. But hey, I'll take any kind of vetting. Hey, questioning. Instead of questioning them, we're like, oh, you're a bin Laden. Great, let's get you out of the country. So with that history as the background here, not getting tough on the Saudis was a disastrous political situation for Trump. And so finally, I think the most important part of this is, how does this end? So now as Anna already pointed out, they tried 4 different excuses. None of them have worked. Is there a point at which the King Salman starts to reconsider whether you should have Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman running everything? Because by the way, he's not supposed to. In the Saudi monarchy, it does not go from father to son. It goes brother to brother to brother, and then you're supposed to go back to the son of the first brother. This bin Salman actually kidnapped the other royals that might be competition, and some reports was that he tortured some people, and now a lot more credible given what he's done at this point, and threatened them and kind of seized power. Is it possible that his dad would then take it away from him? I don't know the mental health of his dad and etc. But the one way that the Saudis could actually resolve it is say he's not the crown prince anymore. Now, no one has suggested that, but they really should. He's not even supposed to be the leader of Saudi Arabia.
Right. I mean, this is some Game of Thrones stuff, right? Especially considering what he did to his own uncles. Yeah. I mean, and who's to say he wouldn't do that to his own father? I mean, he kidnapped the leader of Lebanon. This guy will stop at nothing. So I don't know. We don't know how it's going to end. We can only speculate. But he's a scary guy, and it's amazing the things that he did behind the scenes while he had this facade of progressivism because he allowed women to drive. Oh, he's a reformist. No, he's not. He's actually a lot worse when it comes to some of the major things, including the brutality that he'll do just to remain in power.
And boy, did that false impression blow up in Washington's face. All the people carrying water for him, like Thomas Friedman in the New York Times, saying, "Here comes the Saudi Arab Spring." Now they have to deal with all of this.
Yeah,
they're in perpetual quest for Arab dictator that we can control, and so it would be great to have reform leaders. And look, I want to reform leaders all over the Middle East as much as Thomas Friedman does. But this I bet it's this dictator that's going to work for us, or this CIA puppet that's going to work for us. It hasn't, and it's inauthentic. He has no support from the people. And in the middle of now Saudi Arabia has a cash crunch too. That's why they're trying to get investment here. They're about to do this big summit. Oops, he totally screwed that up. Totally incompetent. And now everybody bailed out of that conference, even including the Treasury Secretary, Steve Mnuchin, who had hung in there for a long time. Now he's not going to go. And in the middle of that economic chaos, he bought himself a $500 million yacht.
Oh my God.
That's who bin Salman is. And he was feted by the Washington elite when he came here, including the media, unfortunately.
As Yemen is being starved to death at the same time, and that also is contributing greatly to the economic problems that they're having in Saudi Arabia. The disjunct is it's like almost Dickensian, the extraordinary wealth of this individual and what he's doing to the poorest country in the region.
And that did not move the American media.
Not even a little.
The wholesale slaughter and starvation in Yemen, but one of their own being dismembered, that moved them.
All right, switching gears a little bit. An explosive device was found in the mailbox of George Soros. This was luckily detonated by police, and this was all thanks to an employee who had discovered the device. Luckily, when the employee had opened the package and discovered the device, it didn't detonate. But according to reports, according to the New York Times, an employee of the residence opened the package, revealing what appeared to be an explosive device. The employee placed the package in a wooded area and then called Bedford police. This is in a New York suburb, to be specific. Also, the device was proactively detonated by bomb squad technicians from Westchester County Police Department. Also, I just wanted to share this one piece from the New York Times story because I thought it was a little ridiculous. The bomber's motive remained unclear. I think we know what the bomber's motive was. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm making too many assumptions, but look, I get it. They're trying to be as responsible as possible. Also, I just want to be clear about why something like this would happen. There has been a concerted effort by right-wingers and right-wing media to go after Soros and spread all sorts of insane conspiracy theories. And by the way, US politicians do the same. So this month, Representative Matt Gaetz, he's a Republican of Florida, falsely speculated that Soros had funded a caravan of migrants moving north toward Mexico.
Matt Gaetz is a total liar. He lies all the time with impunity and no conscience. He goes on television and will say almost anything to support Donald Trump, be a hideous right-winger, etc. He's one of the worst guys in Congress. If fascists took over the country, Matt Gaetz would be at the head of the line, leading that parade enthusiastically. So what a hideous lie to say about someone. And what a preposterous lie that George Soros funded the caravan. Those are people who are incredibly poor, who are running away from violence in their own countries, who are looking for peace and economic opportunity. Soros went to their villages and what? Was like, hey, you poor people, come here, I got a great idea, we'll do a caravan. And if he funded them, boy, he did a terrible job of funding them, because look at them, okay? If you've seen the caravan on TV, they look like they're living a posh lifestyle. And I don't think there's any real housewives of Guatemala in there, okay?
Yeah, but what the crazy thing about this is, what Matt Gaetz said was just false, full of lies, just constantly spreading this propaganda, negative propaganda towards Soros. But among the things that we've heard about Soros and the conspiracy theories that are floating around out there, that's actually a tame one. It's a mild one.
Yeah, and so I do want to commend the New York Times for one thing where they finally had gathered up the courage to say that Soros has been the target of anti-Semitic smears. Because they are anti-Semitic. Can you just call it what it is? And thank God, finally, now when they put a bomb in his house, finally the New York Times acknowledges the reality of it. So they have caricatures of George Soros being the puppet master. That's the oldest, well, the second oldest other than blood libel, anti-Semitic smear there is, that the Jews secretly control things behind the scenes. And okay, the cartoons are harkened back to Nazi Germany. They had the same exact cartoons, right? And the big nose and the whole thing, the caricature of all that, right? But all of the verbiage, the language that they use is the same exact thing. Soros controls everything, Soros funds everything, Soros the evil guy that's behind all this. And Glenn Beck with his chalkboard back in the day on Fox News, it all leads to Soros and the Tides Foundation. And remember, somebody went to go shoot up the Tides Foundation and then got in a shootout with cops. And so, and they've been agitating to try to get, basically asking someone, well, is anybody ever gonna do anything about this guy? And finally somebody put a bomb in his house. And by the way, as always with terrorists, and whoever tried to bomb George Soros is clearly a terrorist.
Exactly, yes.
I mean, like, can we call that what it is?
It is.
I mean, imagine if a Muslim guy put a bomb in any politician's house, right? Let alone a Republican one. We'd all say he's a terrorist, right? So just call right-wing extremism what it is, terrorism. Meant to obviously terrorize and maybe murder, not maybe, definitely murder George Soros. It's a bomb, right? And so, and as with all stupid terrorists, of course somebody, he's rich, of course somebody else in the house was gonna open the mail.
Right.
And you're gonna blow up somebody who's, I don't know how much they're making, right? God damn, that's so stupid and immoral and terrible. And look, then they have the audacity to talk about a left-wing mob. Like,
Yes, okay, there's so many things to touch on with this story, because I think that this one story is basically an accumulation of a bunch of different problems we've been having in society. An issue with rhetoric, problems when it comes to using politics to incite violence. So why does the right wing hate George Soros so much? What is it about George Soros that they hate? Okay, and I want to talk about this because it's a good way to juxtapose the way the left wing handles something that they dislike and the way the right wing handles something that they dislike. So on the right, you have mega donors like the Koch brothers, you have the Mercers, you have Foster Freeze, you have all sorts of right-wing mega donors who go out of their way to really influence politics, not just fund campaigns. I mean, you look at Turning Point USA and you look at who their mega donors are, not the grassroots of the country, okay? All of the major Republican donors are involved. And so on the left, we raise awareness about that without demonizing those mega donors, because it's important for people to know what's at play. It's important for people to be able to find, where the propaganda is, and to be a little more skeptical about the information they're getting from clowns like Charlie Kirk. But on the right, you have George Soros, who does give money to Democrats, right? So just to give you an example, Soros contributed more than $25 million to Hillary Clinton and other Democratic candidates and causes during the 2016 election cycle. That's why the right wing hates him, right? But just be honest about why you hate him. Don't use anti-Semitic smears, don't use conspiracy theories, don't lie about him. Just tell the truth. You don't like the fact that there's money in politics that actually benefits people on the left. And guess what? I agree with you. We all agree here. We want the money out of politics. There's no question about that. No more mega donors, no more super PACs. But instead of actually getting to the root of the problem, the right wing will fearmonger, they'll spread the conspiracy theories, they'll spread the propaganda, and they'll incite violence. And that's exactly what happened today with this story. That's the reason why someone decided it was a good idea to send a bomb to George Soros's home.
What strikes me about this is at the exact same time that the right wing is shaking in their boots over so-called caravans of migrants that probably want to come here to pick lettuce or something, and Syrian refugees and so on and so forth. Who's committing the terror? And there's good studies on this by organizations that look at extremism. I believe last year there was a report issued, I know it got picked up in the New York Times, that found the vast majority of terror attacks in the US are actually far right-wing in nature.
Yes.
In fact, I have the exact numbers on this because I just studied it to get ready for the Tucker Carlson debate. Right-wing extremism went up by 59% last year, and in the last decade, 71% of people killed in terrorist attacks in America were killed by right-wing extremists. Now, 26% were killed by Muslim extremists, which is far too high and disproportionate to the size of in the population. By the way, left-wing and all other extremists combined were only 3%. 71% were right-wing extremists who committed terrorism. But again, as usual, the mainstream media treats it with kid gloves. Oh my God, we'll offend our right-wing audience, and our ratings will go down. So don't tell the truth. Cover it up. Say it's just the Muslims, but don't say it's the right wing, even though it clearly is the right wing. So now, look, on the politics and the demonization, et cetera. So first off, Foster Friess is a really well-known Republican donor. He gives to Turning Point USA and many other Republican candidates, et cetera. I had him on the show when we were doing it on Current TV. He's a very likable guy. Okay, he's a lovely guy, and and he doesn't have like the some of the elitist trappings that some of the other donors have. But does that mean we should allow him to bribe our politicians? Of course not. That's preposterous. Now, he can give money to Charlie Kirk and whoever else he likes to do, spread his message, et cetera. But he should not be able to contribute to, and obviously legally bribe all those politicians. George Soros, what they say about him is 100% wrong. So, okay, to be fair, not 100% because he gives the Democratic Party, but in terms of how they characterize him. So, and then I'll tell you why I'm actually opposed to Soros politically. And I know that's gonna throw the right wing for a total loop, okay? But he gave $18 billion to the Open Society Foundation. $18 billion. What does the Open Society Foundation do? It promotes democracy and human rights around the world. And a lot of that was in Soviet Union countries that are now the former Soviet Union. He helped to bring them out of communism. He's from Hungary, okay? And he didn't want them in communism. You know why? He's a giant capitalist. Yep. He's actually one of the best known capitalists in the history of the world.
He became fabulously wealthy by being a hedge fund manager.
He runs a hedge fund, one of the most successful hedge funds in history. I mean, to call that guy a socialist is insane.
He was even quoted as saying, "I don't particularly want to be a Democrat." So he's not even like this extreme leftist,
No, he in fact speaks out against what he calls the extreme left, which by the way, in his mind might be us. So when he gave $25 million to Hillary Clinton and other Democrats, they used that money to not just against Trump, but against Bernie Sanders and against other progressive Democrats. So do I want George Soros's money out of politics? I've been consistent on this for as long as we've been doing the Young Turks. Well before he spent money against Bernie Sanders or anybody else, okay? Of course I want Soros's money out. I don't want, unlike the right wing, who doesn't care about fairness or principles at all. They'd be like, oh, Koch brothers money, Foster Freeze money, that's great. They should use it to bribe every politician there is. George Soros, evil. I can't believe he'd give money to politicians, right? No, whether they're evil or not, which I don't think they are, they're just either working in their self-interest on the right wing because for tax cuts, honestly, for Soros and some of the others, against their own self-interest because their taxes would go up if the politicians they want win. Either way, I don't want their money in politics. Wolf-pac.com. Get the money out. 28th Amendment. Get all of the money out. Corporate money out, union money out, Soros money out, etc. And how do you actually fight back against people who you think are damaging the country? It's okay to think that, hey, I think the Koch brothers are damaging the country with their politics. You think Soros is, okay? Well, for God's sake, we live in a democracy. For now, kind of, mainly, mostly.
It's a constitutional republic, Cenk.
I know, God, the new right-wing talking point against democracy, and they just, anyway. So, James Thompson running right now in the Koch's hometown in Kansas' 4th district. He's a Justice Democrat, so he takes no corporate PAC money. So to defeat the Koch brothers in their home district with a guy who doesn't take any corrupt money, that's victory. That's America. That's how you do it, not by putting bombs in people's houses.
Yeah. All right, we got to take a quick break. Let's do that. And when we come back, we will give you updates on the migrant caravan story, including some of the fear mongering that we're seeing on the right.
We hope you're enjoying this free clip from the Young Turks. If you want to get the whole show and more exclusive content while supporting independent media, become a member at tyt.com/join today. In the meantime, enjoy this free segment. All right, back on TYT. Eclectic Miscellaneous says, great to have Ken Klippenstein from TYT Investigates on. One of my favorite parts of being a TYT member is helping support the TYT Investigates team. You've broken some great stories that aren't being covered elsewhere.
Thank you.
It's very nice and correct. Sir Sporkalot writes in the member section. It is what it is. He says about Saudi Arabia, of course it's financial. Also, let's not forget that Saudi Arabia was the very first country he visited as president. It took how long before he visited anyone else, never mind Canada or the UK, way over a year. By the way, I had not remembered this until I saw it in a news story the other day. I'm now obsessed with it. Trump has not visited any war zone. Iraq, Afghanistan, or any of those. Why? Because he's a coward. Yep. He's so afraid.
He ran on drawing them down too. And so I don't think he wants attention, on the fact that he didn't do shit about any of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Gabby Marita says, left-wing radicals in 2018 talking loudly at you in Cuban restaurants. Right-wing radicals in 2018 attempted assassination. Yeah, it's really tough to tell who's the real violent mob. And
Trump, sorry, I gotta just add something to that. Like, Trump just said at a rally, like he just applauded a lawmaker who body slammed a journalist. I mean, come on, you wanna talk to me about the violence, the violent mobs? We were just at Politicon. I can assure you the left does not consist of the violent mob.
Yeah. Eczema Boy on Twitter writes in, poll at TYT, which story has changed more times, the Saudis with Khashoggi or the Trump campaign's meeting with the Russians? Ooh, not a bad point. So we'll get to Trump's polling in a second because I think the jury's starting to come in. But let's check the thermometer real quick and see where we are. tyt.com/join. And I believe that if you go to tyt.com/gift and buy a gift for someone, that also counts into the thermometer. So do we have that? Thought we had it. If we don't, that's okay. We can show it. Oh, there it is. No, that's not the thermometer. That's the Ted Cruz thermometer. Okay, but that's good. 22,000 for the Ted Cruz one. We'll get to that story a little bit later too.
Yeah.
All right, we'll come back to the thermometer. No big deal. Anna, what's next?
All right. Before we leave the George Soros story, I wanted to touch on one other angle. So, as we had mentioned earlier, George Soros or one of his employees had discovered an explosive device in his mailbox. Luckily, no one got hurt, and the police successfully and proactively detonated the explosive device. And so far, we don't know of any suspects, but the authorities are looking into it. But one other component to the story that I wanted to touch on is the reaction that we're seeing on social media from right-wingers who have bought into all of the conspiracy theories and propaganda regarding George Soros. Now look, I usually don't care about what people say on Twitter because oftentimes you just come across anonymous, eggs. and people just say things to provoke. But a lot of these include people with their full names, and I just think that it's important for us to get the thought process that some of these people have. So one person wrote, unfortunately, Soros doesn't pick up his own mail. This person is anonymous, obviously, but what does that even mean? So you'd be happy if he died from an explosive device?
Yeah, of course that's what it means. Yeah, they're rooting on terrorism. And by the way, these are all in response to a Fox News tweet about it. So Fox News followers.
Yeah, exactly. That's an important piece. So one other person, David Salvico Jr. says, funding the protesters, mobs, and whatever else, but it's okay for the Dems to attack the Republicans. That's why karma.
Yeah, nobody, like for example, the other day we talked about Mitch McConnell and how he got yelled at a Cuban restaurant in Kentucky. Let's note for the record, there's Cuban restaurants in Kentucky. Okay, so we said it was out of bounds to throw out his leftovers onto the sidewalk. A little different than a bomb.
Absolutely.
Okay, and that's as far as anyone has gone on the left. And we say don't do that. Okay, and telling your elected representatives that you are unhappy with their votes is the single most American thing you could do. Planting a bomb in someone's house is the single most terrorist thing you could do.
One other person wrote, Saudis, haha. I never want anything bad to happen to anyone, but I believe there is a very special, very warm place for him in the very near future. / I want something bad to happen to this guy.
Yeah.
Amazing. One other person wrote, finally a positive start to our morning. It's Kevin McBride.
But these go on and on and on and on and on, right? So do these particular people tweeting represent all Republicans? Since we're fair, we're gonna say of course not, right? But you know how Fox News would react if the shoe was on the other foot.
100%.
If they put a bomb, somebody put a bomb in the Koch brothers mailbox, which we would say that is abhorrent, terrible, disastrous, right? And Fox News hosts would find some random dude on Twitter, and it would only take two. They'd be like, good enough. It's all that. Look at the Democrats. Look at their mobs. Look at their violence. Look at all their stuff. They don't have that, and they still say it.
Yep.
Right. And so this whole talk of how the left is violent is both hilarious and sickening when the right wing, literally in this case and in many cases, revels in violence. Violence is unfortunately, their go-to move. And so, look, again, mainstream media is not allowed to say because they don't want to offend their viewers. But they had 17 people to pick from, and Republican voters picked Donald Trump. So if you think Donald Trump is vile in his attack against Latinos, Muslims, George Soros, reporters, you name it, they didn't pick him despite that. They picked him because of that. The most accurate thing Hillary Clinton has ever said in her life was to say about half of Trump's voters are the deplorables. Unfortunately, with this kind of reaction to the applauding the terrorists on the right wing, I'm afraid the number is a little higher than half.
So I want to have a larger discussion about the effectiveness and influence of right-wing propaganda because we have another story involving propaganda and how successful it's been. So various politicians, including Donald Trump and members of right-wing media, have been fear-mongering and spreading propaganda about the migrant caravan that is headed for the United States. Now, just to give you a taste of some of the things that we're hearing, first we had Donald Trump claiming that the caravan has now been co-opted by Islamic extremists, Middle Easterners. There has been absolutely no evidence of that. But Sarah Huckabee Sanders, his press secretary, has doubled down on that notion and just said today the president absolutely has evidence of unknown Middle Easterners traveling with the caravan. Again, there are reporters on the scene and they are reporting that there is absolutely no evidence of Middle Easterners in the caravan whatsoever. Also, reporters traveling with the caravan, this is what Trump said, reporters traveling with the caravan would find MS-13. You're going to find Middle Eastern, you're going to find everything. Right. And so reporters looked, and of course they found none of those things, none of those people in the caravan. And so what you hear 24/7 right now with the right wing, both politicians and media. In fact, our very own J.R. Jackson put together a compilation video to give you a taste of what you can experience. You're about to see Pam Bondi in some of these clips. She is the Attorney General for the state of Florida, who's angling for a Fox News job, and get a load of some of the things she and others have to say about the caravan.
A large group of people, they call it a caravan.
True refugees fleeing oppression will encamp wherever they can, away from their place of origin.
They're not here peacefully.
In other words, well, they'd stay in Mexico.
As the caravan, and look, that is an assault on our country.
This mobile mob, a lot of people calling it invasions.
It's violence, and it's got to stop.
Well, it's no wonder the mobile mob feels emboldened.
I've seen firsthand what comes into our country from Mexico, from China to Mexico.
They know that there is protection in numbers, that if they flood the zone, they'll be able to overwhelm Border Patrol officials.
The heroin, the fentanyl, all the drugs, the gang members.
I'm talking to a lot of your people, and they're going to form a wall, different kind of a wall, until we get the other one built. We need a wall built fast, fast.
Okay, so as usual, none of it is true. Matt Gutman from ABC News said, I spent 7 years in the Middle East. I speak a little bit of Arabic, and we went and tried to find Middle Easterners. There are no Middle Easterners in that caravan. I mean, what a preposterous thought that Middle Easterners would somehow wind up in Honduras and join a caravan coming up here. Are they violent? There's absolutely no evidence of that. They are suggesting as if they're going to break through some sort of fence. No, they're going to a port where they're going to seek asylum legally. Never mentioned on Fox News. A mobile mob is what the graphic said next to Laura Ingraham. But look, the good news is, I think it's backfiring. Trump's poll numbers are in disastrous shape. And their idea, and this is why Andrew Gillum in the Florida governor's race, the very first thing he did after he won the primary and Andrew Gillum won the primary, he said, you don't want to monkey this up. It was a clear racial reference to Andrew Gillum. Why? Why would he say something so outrageous? Because he thinks we're going to have one last dance here. We're going to rile up our white racist voters and do the Southern strategy one more time, okay? But I think the good news is that the country is not nearly as racist as they think it is. Yes, there is plenty of that, plenty. But I don't think it's enough to win the election for DeSantis, who said that about Gillum, right? And I don't think it's enough for them to win the House. And what they don't realize they're doing is, right before the election, they're spitting in every Latino's face, every minority's face, and like goading them to go and vote. They're like, oh, you're not gonna vote. Well, I got good news for you. I can't stand you. I'll make up every kind of lie to demonize you and to make sure that people hate you and are riled up against you. Well, all right, duly noted.
You know, it's funny because right now the Trump administration is making the same mistake that some on the left made following the 2016 election. So right now, this is all a political strategy, right? So what you're seeing in this messaging is a way of trying to get the right-wing voters excited to go to the polls, right? Because Democrats thought that was the one and only thing that convinced Republicans to go out there and vote. They voted for Trump because of their racist tendencies. But the fact of the matter is, with the 2016 election, as we all know, there were a number of factors that played a role in Trump winning the election. It wasn't just his slander toward minorities and all that stuff that played a role, but that wasn't, in my opinion, that wasn't really the dominant factor. And so I think that he's using this same strategy, thinking that this is the main thing that's going to get Republicans elected over Democrats. And I agree with you. I don't think that's really going to happen.
Look, I think half of his, as I've said a million times, half of his voters are the deplorables, and some unlikely voters showed up to vote for him because they're like, oh wow, man, finally somebody's saying what I've always been thinking, and they might not consider themselves racist, but they're like, hey, he had the courage to say what's true, that those people are inferior to us, right? And so, but a lot of his voters loved the idea of draining the swamp. And all he's done is corruption ever since he came into office.
Yep. And
it's glaringly obvious. Without those voters, all you have left is 25% of the country. I got news for you. That doesn't win elections.
Exactly.
And I'm sorry, I wanted to, because you mentioned the demagoguing, et cetera. One more thing about Laura Ingraham, because you saw her in that clip. She gave the Merriam-Webster definition, dictionary definition of a caravan. Now, 3 of the things that were in the definition were totally uninteresting. It describes, a company or travelers of a journey through a desert or hostile regions, a covered wagon or motor vehicle equipped as traveling living quarters. Why would you even put that up? One thing said though, also a train of pack animals.
She's disgusting. She really is. She's a terrible person, period. She really is a terrible person. You adopted children from Guatemala. What is wrong with you? What is wrong with you?
And they're gonna grow up to live in a society where you have riled up people against that region.
They're gonna grow up and see the things you said about their country of origin, okay? That you think people coming from that country are nothing more than animals. Like, how disgusting is that? Okay, moving on, because this type of propaganda, unfortunately, does work with some people. And nothing made that clearer than what Emma Vigeland experienced when she went to a Trump rally in Arizona recently. So I'm gonna skip ahead to video 3. And she spoke to a number of Trump supporters, but one Trump voter stood out the most. And here's what he believes should be done with migrants as they attempt to cross the border.
What would solve the whole thing in the border if they would just start shooting? Only shoot a couple and they would go home.
You think deterrence would work?
If they would shoot.
So a lot of these people are fleeing horrific political situations themselves and seeking asylum. You still think that we should shoot?
If they just shot at them a few times, they would go back.
Well, I thought Emma hit on a good point there. She was saying fleeing political violence, and my mother came from El Salvador, and she was undocumented. And when I asked her case, and then started reading studies, I found that it was not uncommon that many of these folks are actual refugees, I think, and not just seeking, necessarily a better life, but literally seeking not to die from a war zone. So in my mother's case, she was fleeing the Civil War there, which the U.S. had played a role in. And so now today, when we look at the migrants, many of them are not from Mexico, they're from Honduras, where our government unfortunately also had a negative role after the coup, in other countries like that. So I think we need to consider this kind of a context, like why are they coming here? It's not necessarily to want to invade, but just to survive.
So the right wing, and they say it all the time, will take what you said and say, well, you see that? Instead of blaming them, they're blaming us for the problems. But why do you want to blame them? They're poor people who are running from violence and poverty. Even if it was just poverty and not the violence, like what joy do you get out of blaming those poor people who are looking for a better life for themselves and their kids? And I guess if you want to be ignorant, that's your call. But did we help to start a civil war in El Salvador? Yes, we most definitely did. It's not in dispute. Has our war on drugs created monstrous gangs in Latin America? Yes, of course they have. Every time we do prohibition, it creates gangs like Al Capone during the prohibition of beer. And now MS-13 and other gangs in the prohibition of marijuana. And so does policy have an effect? Yes. Now, if you'd like to be stupid, and I'm keeping it real with you, and you say, no, brown people are bad, we good. I don't care about history, I don't care about consequences, I don't care about policy. Well, I can't help you because we don't speak the same language. I speak policy and facts and consequences, and you speak stupid.
But look, I think that there is a lot of ignorance, right? And there's ignorance across the board, regardless of what your political ideology is, because what we just discussed very briefly right now is something that most Americans don't know about because our media doesn't talk about it. Right. They always address the symptoms of a larger problem, okay? So this whole military-industrial complex, not only does it have negative impacts on us as US taxpayers, who should have things like universal health care, who should have our taxpayer money actually helping our lives and benefiting our lives, but it also negatively impacts other countries and leads to these situations where people flee violence from their own countries, and that violence is something that we played a role in. So we need to look, if you don't like brown people, okay, I disagree with you wholeheartedly, but that's fine. We can actually solve the root of the issue moving forward rather than dealing with these symptoms, right? Because why are things bad in these countries? Is there anything that we can do to help the situation in these countries so we don't have these, mass numbers of refugees trying to come in? But we never have that conversation.
Just use your head. Why would people want to leave their homes?
Exactly.
I don't want to leave my home.
Me either.
There's a reason if you do. And I feel like if, we're a part of that reason, not all of it, but a part of it, we should try to help a little bit. And so that's my view.
I totally agree.
And by the way, we were part of the reason why Japan and Germany were devastated after World War II for good reason. And what do? We helped rebuild them. And instead of being our enemies, they became our top allies and helped to the global economy, which then helped us again. It's almost as if when you do smart things, you get good results. When you do stupid things, you get bad results. But let me go a little further. The SS St. Louis came here in 1939. It had 900 people on that boat. You could almost call it a caravan, right? It was on the water and not on land. And it was filled with 900 Jews who were trying to escape Nazi Germany. We turned them back. We didn't ask questions, and we just didn't want them here. Hey, America first. Well, our people, if you're not from here, that's your problem. We don't want this mob coming in. 250 of them died in gas chambers when we sent them back. So what do the Republicans want to do now? By the way, if you want to cry over the analogy, go ahead and cry. But I'm telling you historical facts because they're relevant and important. So when those people come here, and Trump's idea is, don't even let them seek asylum. I don't want to know. I don't want to know if they're refugees or not refugees. I don't care. Just send them back. Well, we did that in 1939. And it's one of the most shameful things we've ever done in American history. So if you want to repeat things like that, you could have this thoughtless policy. And the thing that drives me crazy is, again, as always with the right wing, they can hold two contradictory thoughts in their head at the same time. See, Donald Trump is tough and he's been great at the border and he's so much better than Democrats. That's why everybody's coming in at the same time. What? Then why are people still coming? I thought Donald Trump was a genius who figured out how to make them stop coming, but it turns out they're coming in larger numbers than ever. Because it isn't about Donald Trump, it isn't about deterrence. And even if you shoot them, that's not gonna help because they're shooting from the other side.
Exactly.
And they're shooting more from the other side. They've got their kids and they're running for their lives. And so the answer to that particular Republican gave to Emma in that rally was, let's shoot them as well. And if you'd given that answer in 1939, that would have been the only answer worse than the one we actually gave. Oh, you're running from the Nazis? We'll shoot at you and that'll teach you a lesson. So it doesn't mean you have to let everyone into the country. That's a total figment of right-wing imagination. When the caravan comes and they seek asylum, we have a process. And some of them are likely to be seeking asylum for legitimate reasons and some not. And the ones that are not, which is probably the majority, we don't allow them into the country. They're not ramming through any gate, they're going through legal process, and when they do, unfortunately, in my opinion, a lot of them get sent back, okay? We actually do have laws in this country. So when you hear on Fox News or Donald Trump saying, we don't have any borders and we don't have any laws in this country, it's not remotely true. We have a process that we've applied for decade after decade. And is it perfect? Do people cross the border without permission? Of course they do. It's not anywhere near perfect. But this caravan, it's a giant caravan. They're not hiding. All of the cameras in the world are trained on them. They're not trying to sneak in. They're in a caravan. They're going to go to a port and seek asylum. Do the right thing, do the American thing. Talk to them for a second and figure out which ones are refugees and which ones are not.
Yeah, follow the law. Actually go through our legal process instead of doing what Trump is suggesting, which is breaking the law and not hearing them out at all and turning them back. All right, we gotta take another break. When we come back though, if you're feeling depressed from this news, hold because Fox News had its own focus group of voters and got some thoughts on this caravan situation that actually shocked and surprised me.
No, I'm not at all shocked. I'm telling you, man, this election is going to be amazing. Wait till you see that in that Fox panel, and then we'll give you the numbers on how independent voters are leaning. Fascinating.